Even before the white civil rights protesters arrived here at Lafayette Park, large crowds of counter-demonstrators were here to refute them. Here at the Supreme Court, lawyers representing the state of Mississippi argued potential black jurors were removed from the jury pool for legal reasons. They believe there is strength in the sheer number of people that showed up. They say it shows that their movement has momentum. He served with the Marine Corps during the height of fighting in the Vietnam War. In his speech, President Trump called for bipartisan compromise, and despite major divisions here in Washington, members of both parties think it's possible on some issues. A sweeping new law signed by the president this week aims to jumpstart the fight against opioid abuse. Here at NIH, it gives the agency director new flexibility to fund the most promising areas of research. We are here on the floor of the DNC. State Senator Joyce Elliott joining us. During the debate back home in Arkansas about these medical marijuana proposals, public safety has been one of the major concerns of opponents. In order to maximize yields, some plants are allowed to grow under natural sunlight. The process takes much longer, but the plants, they get much bigger. This one right here is almost ready for harvest. It's sticky and you can sure smell it. Guys, we just were able to get into the neighborhood ground zero for where this happened. There's actually 2 vehicles in that rubble there. Here's one of the biggest problems trying to make this work. From side to side, this home is just over 30 feet. Good Sunday morning and welcome to Capitol View. I'm Drew Petrimoulx. Thanks for being with us. Tax cuts and medical marijuana have been the big ticket items during the 91st General Assembly. Deputies searching for a person of interest in the death of a woman found beaten early this morning in Pulaski County. Excuse me, Judge, we have a couple quick words with you. What do you got to say to the families? Sorry. Do you think it's fair that you only got probation? A little boy was killed in this incident. I think you could at least say something. Do you think someone that does a hit and run on a 3-year-old and doesn't turn back should not serve any jail time? Should the people of Arkansas worry at all because of these accusations of how you would be as a lieutenant governor? No. All 4 of you voted for the American Health Care Act, passed in May. This is the House plan to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act. Congressman Hill, why not listen when all of those organizations are coming out against the legislation that you voted for? Which brings me to my next question. Should a Republican primary President Trump? Oh, I don't know. When people think your job is to cover for a president who can be erratic at times, how do you deal with that?
One day at a time.
They say it's one of the best parties in town. Washington Mardi Gras brings the pageantry and revelry of Bourbon Street right here to the nation's capital. It's a 3-day affair, complete with cocktail parties, a pageant, even an indoor parade. The Louisiana delegation is heavily involved, and they help foot the bill to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars. The money comes from lawmakers' leadership political action committees. First allowed 40 years ago, leadership PACs provided a way for elected officials to raise money and dole it out to other like-minded politicians and candidates. That was then. This is now.
The rules on the books say that leadership PAC money can be spent for almost anything.
Over the past 2 years, Senator Bill Cassidy spent a total of more than $100,000 on the yearly party, for catering and event space at the Washington Hilton, and for tickets from the Mystic Crew, which puts on the events. Over the same period, Representative Steve Scalise used his leadership PAC to spend nearly $40,000 at the Hilton and more than $53,000 on tickets. Congressman Ralph Abraham, Clay Higgins, Cedric Richmond, and Senator John Kennedy also used their leadership PAC money to support Washington Mardi Gras. All told, members of the Louisiana delegation spent more than $250,000 on the 2017 and 2018 events. It's held here at the Washington Hilton. It's one of the premier venue spaces in the city. Scores of Louisianans travel to D.C. for the celebration. There are meetings and mingling. Some lawmakers even host fundraisers. But critics say leadership PACs have strayed from their original intent.
Just one more thing that makes people feel that politicians are disconnected from their constituents.
Ellen Weintraub is vice chair of the Federal Election Commission. She has spent years trying to rein in spending by leadership PACs.
I don't think their intent is to subsidize the lifestyle of the people who are receiving the money.
But that's exactly what Michael Beckel with Issue 1 says lawmakers across the country are doing.
They are collecting money from the special interest groups that have business before their committees and donors who have already maxed out to their campaigns.
Beckel's organization conducted a nationwide study that found lawmakers used that money to pay for things like luxury resorts, golf memberships, fine dining, and big parties.
If you've got additional pots of money that a special interest or wealthy donor knows that they can give to curry favor, that's one more potential avenue for corruption in the process.
Louisiana lawmakers say that's nonsense. They contend Washington Mardi Gras promotes the state. During the events, they meet with other officials and constituents, hearing the needs and concerns of people in Louisiana. But no one from the Louisiana delegation was willing to defend their support for Washington Mardi Gras on camera.
As long as you have transparency.
Former FEC Commissioner Hans von Spakovsky, now with the Conservative Heritage Foundation, defends leadership PACs. He says they are an expression of political free speech, and there's nothing secret about their spending.
I think all the critics of this show that they really don't trust the American people to make their own decisions on the candidates that they want to vote for.
Beckel and Weintraub say leadership PACs need more regulation, but Weintraub can't muster the votes on the FEC to limit their spending.
I could write a scathing statement about it, but I couldn't actually punish anybody.
Change would likely require new laws passed by the very people taking advantage of the status quo. Members of Congress. In Washington, I'm Drew Petrimoulx.
I'll miss being able to weigh in.
Tennessee Senator Bob Corker has found himself neck deep in some of the thorniest issues of the last decade, from a financial meltdown and auto bailouts to a litany of foreign policy crises all across the globe.
We've done really well at getting our uniform dirty on every play and getting involved in the big issues.
Among his biggest victories, Corker counts an effort that's brought electricity to more than 50 million people in Africa, and another aiming to free millions of people from modern slavery. Corker visited 75 countries during his time in office, producing some of his most memorable moments.
To see the devastation and what people live through, and to see what the United States of America means to people like that, pretty moving.
But Corker admits he's leaving without accomplishing one of his most important goals. He ran on a promise to improve the country's fiscal outlook. He retires with the U.S. almost $22 trillion in debt.
We have not done well at solving the fiscal issue.
Recently, Corker became best known for his complicated relationship with President Trump. While he likes some of the president's policies, Corker is one of the most vocal Republican critics of the president's rhetoric.
It's just not a good example for the young people of our country. It's just not. And it affects everyone.
And as he says goodbye and prepares to head back to Tennessee, many speculate Corker may return to the national spotlight, maybe even to challenge President Trump in 2020.
I have no idea what I'm going to do. Is it a possibility? Maybe.
Stephen was 24 years old. He was a graduate of Bentonville High School and University of Arkansas.
Stephen Hakala loved music, especially playing guitar.
Had talked about potentially working in the music industry, owning music stores, teaching lessons.
But those dreams and his family's world were shattered on April 3rd, 2016. That day, a police officer knocked on the door.
And he said, "Your son died in his sleep in his apartment last night." Then it just shattered me.
Stephen's parents were devastated, but also confused. Detectives found no obvious signs of drug use or trauma, but they did find something out of place, a 5-pound bag of unwashed poppy seeds.
And I remember asking the detective if, he thought this could have had anything to do with Stephen's death, and even my doctor friend, and we all said no.
But when the toxicology report came back, the Hakalas were shocked. The cause of death was listed as a morphine overdose.
Senator from Arkansas.
This week, Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton spoke from the Senate floor about Stephen's death.
Resulted in part because of a dangerous gap in our nation's drug laws.
During their search for answers, his parents discovered several websites with instructions for making poppy tea. They worked with researchers from Sam Houston State University, who found deadly levels of morphine in several brands of poppy seeds they ordered online.
Manufacturers and distributors, retailers are selling not just the seeds, but the seeds coated with opium latex.
We need to change the regulatory approach. We need to make sure that we ban all unwashed poppy seeds.
Stephen was a very intelligent, driven kid.
The Hakalas were in the gallery when Cotton delivered his speech. They came to Washington to push for new laws, hoping to prevent others from experiencing their pain.
That's an act of true love for Stephen and for their fellow Americans.
In Washington, I'm Drew Petrimoulx.